Hey everybody, welcome to Keeping Your Business on Track. We give you the education and inspiration you need to grow and elevate your mortgage and real estate businesses. Today, I'm here with Tom Taranto. Tom, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I have to, I'm going to give Tom a little bit of an intro because he deserves one here. Couple facts, 19 years in real estate in Brevard County. Is that true?
That is correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Since 2004. Your team has closed over 1,000 transactions. Is that pretty close right there?
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing. You're currently a member of the Keller Williams Luxury International, it's a large international business network at Keller Williams.
Yep, that's correct.
Fully versed in cutting edge real estate technology.
Yep.
Would you published author?
Yep.
That's incredible. Appeared on national TV. Is that true as well?
That is true as well. Yes.
All these accolades here. President of a nonprofit organization. Are you still president of that?
Yes, I am.
Providers?
Yep.
We won't talk about that today, but I know some. I forgot to talk to you about that. Some similar people in that network. Great network for seniors, correct?
Yes.
Providing services and things like that for seniors.
Yep.
Good. President for 10 years of Elite Referral Network at Melbourne Regional Chamber.
Yeah.
Still
am. Yep.
When do you have the time to do all this stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. I squeeze it into the schedule. Yeah.
Couple other things: MAPS coaching, 4-time graduate of Bold, a real estate sales boot camp, producer of Tom Taranto Show real estate video program and podcast, trainer at Keller Williams Regional and Market Center level. Also, okay. So obviously you have a lot going on.
Yes.
Awesome. We're going to talk a little bit today about building teams.
Okay, good.
And
good.
You know, with your background, there's some more to it that we'll get into. I thought you'd be the perfect candidate to join us today and talk about building a team. I've said enough about you.
Okay.
Let's hear it from you. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. So, so I worked for 14 years in training and development. So I did that in Sweden. So I worked with a lot of big corporations. And 2004, I moved back to Florida, where I had come from. And I felt like when I got into real estate, a lot of that training and development, the subjects that I trained in really came in handy in growing my real estate business. So one of the things that we used to teach to corporate officials was negotiation skills training.
Right.
And the material that we were teaching was based on it came from the Harvard Business School, the negotiation department. And so we would, train people in negotiating, but it was kind of funny because I spent years training people in something but not doing it. And so when I got into real estate, it was interesting because a lot of the skills that I had trained people in for a long time, I was able to put them into play in growing a business here.
So wait, let's go back a step. So Harvard Business School, is that even an accredited university? I've never heard of Harvard. I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, it was the material that we used. So the company that I worked for, when I joined it, had a lot of the top corporate and government people.
Right.
And they trained the executives. And one of the reasons that we were popular is because we were native English speakers, and we were dealing with Swedish executives or Swedish government officials. So one of the people that I was able to train was actually the secretary for the prime minister at the time, was one of my students. So I started off teaching English, and then I ended up teaching the subject of what I call international communication skills, and that included cross-cultural communication, how to run effective meetings, how to give presentations, and also the negotiations.
So, I mean, in what you're saying is you're training people. I mean, a lot of those things are analogous to the real estate business.
Yeah.
I mean, you're training on negotiation. I mean, real estate agents have to negotiate deals on a daily and ongoing basis.
Yep.
Presentation skills. I mean, think about a listing presentation or even a buyer presentation.
Exactly.
So it wasn't too big of a stretch for you to cross over when you came over the pond.
The skills, exactly. And then even just like I used to do proofreading, I did translation from Swedish to English.
Okay.
And I did proofreading for documents that were written in English. And I just thought the same thing, that now I had spent years proofreading, and now I'm proofreading contracts, to make sure that there's no mistakes in a contract that we're writing, for example.
So you were in this business coaching and training capacity in Sweden. And when you moved back here, what made you say, I want to do real estate? I mean, was that something you've always wanted to do, or did you fall into it?
Yeah, I fell into it. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was not what I was supposed to be doing. It wasn't the thing that I moved back. I actually had bought a patent from an inventor in Sweden. And when I was moving back here, 2004, my goal was to promote that patent and make a bunch of money on licensing the patent. And just a side note, a friend of mine he was heading towards retirement, asked me if I wanted to join his real estate business. And I did, and got so busy in 2004, if you remember, it was a booming year, and ended up not putting the time needed into pursuing the patent. And then just essentially the patent eventually expired, and I was in real estate ever since.
Okay, cool. And so you've been in real estate in Brevard for almost 20 years. I mean, we've been in business for, I think we started in 2002 at Morgan Financial.
Yeah.
So 2 years later, here comes Tom.
Yeah.
What was your how's your experience changed? I mean, I know you started off in a different capacity than you are now. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been an adventure because the first half, I started right in the middle of 2004. We got hit by 3 hurricanes. The market was booming. So I had that second half of 2004, and then essentially all of 2005. By January of 2006, it was clear to me that we were heading into the recession.
Right.
And it was just like a switch.
Oh, yeah. And I moved to Brevard County in April of 2006. And I tell people to this day, I feel super blessed that I started in the mortgage business in Brevard County at that time, because everyone else was still, they were at the party for the last couple of years.
Right.
And then they were all hungover when I came there, figuratively speaking, of course. We know agents and mortgage people don't drink. That's also a joke. But I have terrible dad jokes. But so, I got there, people, they had bad habits. It's a lot like today, where people had bad habits, where the business, they were so used to the business just hitting them, wherever they went.
Right.
And I come in, from a different market, and Los Angeles was a very different market, and, did all the activities and to grow my business, where I looked around, and people that I worked with in the same office were just like, oh, it'll come back. Don't worry. I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to do this. It really reminds me of like what happened the last year here. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it was, from 2006. So we went into that literally about 6 years. I think we started noticing a nice, started getting more traction, getting more sales in 2012. But it was definitely a time of adapting and surviving throughout that whole time. So it hasn't been, 19 years of luxury. It was essentially going in through a pretty long period of difficulty, and I do feel like when we got to 2012 and was still alive, that it was part of what has made us stronger for the last 11 years, because we knew how to run a business in spite of a really difficult market.
Yeah, as they say, we have some scar tissue that we're not going to make some of those mistakes again, hopefully.
Yeah.
And those people that lived through that, to 2008, like you said, 2008 through 12. I mean, in the mortgage business, we were fortunate to have the refi booms because of the lower rates then.
Yeah.
But the purchase market was tough. Short sales, foreclosures.
Yep.
I remember getting a contract, going, yes, I got a contract. Oh, it's a short sale. I'll see you in 6 to 8 months, right?
Yep.
And that was a challenge, but through that, I mean, you navigated that. I think. Tell me about you. I said a lot. You experienced owning your own company during that time.
Yeah.
And
yes.
Talk about that experience.
Yeah. So I grew. So I had the man that I started working with. He ended up passing away, and I took over as the broker of the company. And at the time, it was just like 3 of us. It's my brother, a friend of ours, and an assistant. And we ended up taking that and grew it to 13 agents. So we had a brokerage with 13 agents. So I did experience what it was like to grow, to try to figure out like what could I offer people to get them to want to join my brokerage. Figuring out, like, am I going to provide leads for the agents? What types of systems? And made a lot of mistakes. And it definitely wasn't all lucrative or profitable.
Right.
But it was educational. That's for sure. As it developed.
Well, I guess that's the cost of the education sometimes, and we've all experienced it. And it's hard to grow without making mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. That's what you got to learn from your failures. So that going back a step. What inspired you? Well, we talked about your kind of, I don't want to say fell into, because everything happens for a reason, but you got into the real estate business. Yeah. What were your biggest challenges that you faced between the corporate world and the training and coaching you did to moving into the real estate world? What were the biggest challenges that you had?
So I remember sitting back and talking with my brother, because I worked with my brother at the time, and I realized that we were like, nobody teaches you how to run a real estate business. Right. Like it was, and it's funny because we had a copy of the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent by Gary Keller.
Yep.
And we had a copy of it. I remember looking at some of the org charts that are in the book, which basically is how to grow a team and how to run a team. It's actually, you could run an entire brokerage using that book. We had it. I actually hadn't read it. And I just remember looking at flipping through it. But we were like, no one teaches you how to run a real estate business. So we were kind of winging it. I did at some point back in maybe 2007, I did some coaching. So I had a coaching program and did that for maybe a year and a half. But I think that really, honestly, that when I got more seriously into coaching, that was one of the turning points for me. I ended up hiring a serious coach that was able to kind of coach me through these decisions. And it really helped me to see my blind spots. Like what is it that I don't know? And I've ended up now, I've had the same coach now for quite a few years, and it's been instrumental in a lot of the progress I've made.
Yeah. The best football players, the best, golfers, the best tennis players, they all have coaches, right? And they practice. They have coaches, multiple coaches. And for some reason in the professional world, I think a lot of people don't think that's a sign of weakness or a loss. It's a different mentality. It's not the mentality I have. I think everyone needs a coach, even, whether it's, for your personal life, your work life, coaches are invaluable, So
it's been huge.
What value have you, can you give me a little insight on the value you've gotten out of having that coach for that time?
Yeah. The coach that I have right now really has helped me go from essentially just being a husband and wife team, just working with my wife and myself, to hiring my first full-time admin, and then growing it to now I have a sales manager, director of operations, and 10 agents that are essentially self-sufficient. So really starting from scratch. And this is somebody who's also consistently learning and growing and developing. But, over this period of time, I think I started with him in 2017.
Okay.
So it's been 6 years with the same coach, and it's just every week we're on the phone talking about the issues at hand and getting, just a different perspective on it. At the end of the day, I make my own decision, but it's just to get that different perspective. And a lot of times realizing that, whoa, I would have made a mistake if I had just rushed in, hadn't had time to reflect and get his different. And you got to remember, he's talking with the top real estate agents and top real estate teams across the country as his full-time job. So he's getting a lot of the different currents of what's going on in the industry that I'm here in Brevard County, dealing with the day-to-day. I don't have that perspective as much. Oh, yeah. So it's very helpful.
So it's a source of information, soundboarding, brainstorming, different opinion, not a competitor, not a local competitor. It's
he's in Las
national,
Vegas.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Yep. The value there is large. So, going back to building a team, our topic for today, you kind of gave some insight of how you built that team. But when you set out, did you set out to build a team? Was that something that came about later, or what made you want to build the team?
It's truly, been about leverage. Simply by working with other people, you're buying your own time. And I think also that it is a matter of, the real estate agent is kind of the Renaissance man. They have to do everything, and nobody's good at everything. There's going to be tons of that list that they're not good at, and I'm not good at. So to find out what is it that I need to do, and how could I have someone else do those other things? So, partly about expanding and making more money, partly about just being able to focus on what you're good at and just keep working on what you're good at. Let other people do the 80%. I'll do my 20%. But also, I think what has kind of grown on me over the period of time is the significance of creating a job opportunity for other people. So now that I've been doing it for 19 years, knowing that even if I could retire and just go off and relax. I'm able to take what I've learned and share it with somebody who's newer and help them to get started in the real estate business and start their career and making a living. And that's very satisfying as well.
It's funny you said that. We have our mission statement is creating an environment for others to prosper.
Yeah.
Not just the company, but the people that work here, not just the people that work here, but our partners. It's an environment. Now you give people the opportunity. What they do with that opportunity is up to them. You can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
The opportunity is a bountiful. We give them tools and the opportunity, and it's what they choose to do with that opportunity. So one challenge as a leader, because you are a leader of a team, 2 teams, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But one challenge as a leader is to, you can't, knowing that you can't motivate people. You can motivate people for a day or 2. So how do you keep people engaged? How do you keep them where they want to be? And you talked about the things you like to do. Well, yeah, if you're doing things you like to do, things you're good at, and you like to do them, you're going to be wildly successful versus doing things you hate doing and you're not good at, right?
Yeah.
So again, how do you keep people in that zone as a leader of the team? How do you keep them in that zone of doing things they like to do and they're good at to help them provide that opportunity to be successful?
Yeah. So we do a one-on-one coaching session with each of our people. We use a tool called the 411. Mm-hmm. And the 411 essentially is one goal for the year, one goal for this month, and then 4 weeks. So what's going to happen these 4 weeks? So it's essentially a one-pager where they've written down what they're trying to accomplish for the year. And it's really a powerful tool for making sure we're on the same page. Because if you work for me and I see your 411 and that's not what I want you to be doing, we're not on the same page.
Right.
If we're on the same page, the main question is, how do I translate an annual goal to actions this week that are going to lead to that goal? Mm-hmm. And that's really the hard part. And that conversation is something that we do regularly with our people just to make sure that, hey, let me see your calendar. Are these things that you're supposed to be doing this week, are they on the calendar in a time block so that they're actually going to happen? Or are we going to meet next week and we're going to have a bunch of excuses as to why you didn't do it?
Sure. So you help them with accountability.
Oh, yeah.
Accountability is huge. I mean, I love it. You said the 411, you take this big audacious goal, like a yearly goal.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do I need to do, to win that goal today?
Right.
Let's win the day, and then we'll win the week. And then if we win the week, we'll win the month. If we win the month, can we win the year?
Yeah. And that's you're translating results, which is typically what the goals are, into actions. And that's the hard part. It's like, that's a result. This is an action. And it has to fit onto your calendar. What I found is that a lot of times those things that you're putting in the weekly 411, they don't fit in the calendar because you're trying to do so much, and you have to either break it down or be more realistic or something, because there's a disconnect between reality and just setting a bunch of exciting goals.
And it's so easy to get distracted in this world. You can watch the news, you can get distracted. Oh, this is what direction I got to go, or the rates, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, there's enough business being done that you can be wildly successful without. Doesn't matter what rates are doing. It doesn't matter what who's saying what about this and that, and negativity in the news. I don't care if you watch Fox or CNN. The negativity is just all over the place.
Yeah.
And the reality is, to just break it down. What do I have to do today? Right? What do I have to do today to win the day? And going back to that 80-20, we've already come up a couple times, but it's astounding that the 20% is what moves the needle.
Right.
But a lot of people focus on the 80%.
Yeah.
And you made mention of that. It's are you doing the things that you need to be doing? Well, no, I got busy, right? I got busy, my email, this and that, and they don't do the things that make them money. So the secret to success is what? Do the things that make you money.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because the effort and I think real estate agents are very attention deficiency as a general group. And so we are salespeople in general. And it gets really boring. You just tell them, okay, I want you to make 100 phone calls and your goal is to have 20 conversations. Mm-hmm. That's boring. So let me go and look for some shiny object that's going to make it so I don't have to have those 100 phone calls and 20 conversations. And literally, it's across so many agents are doing that. They're just looking for any way to get out of talking to people.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And when we tell them that, hey, we're heading into a shifting market, So you actually now have to talk to twice as many people.
Yep.
They don't like that.
No.
So they're still even more looking for a shiny object, something to avoid. And that's the saying that success is, it's not easy, but it's simple.
It is.
And in order to be successful, you have to deal with boredom because it's boring. If I tell you have to sit down right now and make 100 phone calls, that's going to be boring, but you need to talk to your people. And that's,
so wait, there's no easy button. I'm confused. And salespeople all the time, a good salespeople person is looking to make their job more efficient and effective.
right.
And they're going to look for that CRM that will do half their work for them. And they're going to look at this and they're going to get sold by this. And I call them just distractions. And the reality is, and this is the secret, let's tell our viewers, we'll just break the news to them. The secret to success is actually boring. It's doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? Is that what you found?
It's very boring. Yeah.
It's very boring. And the successful salespeople are very good at doing the same thing consistently.
Yeah.
Same way every time, over and over and over again.
It's the consistency. And I think that in anything, that consistency is what leads to results. But consistency is boring. And it's just a matter of get it over with, do the stuff you have to do, and then you can have some fun. And
yeah, sure. And look, you can make a very good living in mortgage and real estate. And when you're at work hard, grind.
Yeah.
Go above and beyond. Work for 8 hours a day. Don't need to do it in 10 to 12 if you're working the whole time.
Yeah.
And then you get to have fun and enjoy all the things that you grew.
Yeah.
But it's funny because everyone's looking for that easier route, and it's right there in front of them.
Yeah.
And you said it earlier. It's like, you make 100 phone calls to get 20 conversations.
Right.
You can't have a sale without a conversation.
Yeah.
And so making the 100 phone calls in and of itself is, if they do 100 phone calls and said, I made the 100 phone calls. Yeah. Well,
you didn't talk to anybody.
What'd you get out of it? Nothing.
Did you get an appointment?
Did you get an appointment? Did you get a listing appointment, a buyer's appointment, meeting?
Yep.
What did you get out of it? It's the results. Yeah. You got to do the activity, but you got to be the results driven. And some people lose focus. I did the activity, Joe. It didn't happen for me. But were you focusing on a result? And the more people you can talk to, it's not a hard equation. The more conversations you have, the more opportunities for sales.
Yeah.
So you take those opportunities and you subtract out the people that said no, and that's how much money you're going to make.
Yeah.
It's not a complicated formula. I think we tend to overthink it on purpose to get out of the mundane routine of making those calls or doing whatever makes you the money.
Yeah. And besides the desire to not have to have conversations with people, which is basically what it is. The fact that we as real estate agents, I'm not sure how it is on the lending side, is we are literally, it's like we have a giant target on our backs to all of these salespeople that are calling us to sell us those shiny objects. And it's painful to see all the new agents thinking that, okay, let me just write a check for this and this, and then I'll get a listing out of it. I'll get a sale out of it. And it's like, you're going to go broke if you buy all of these things from all of these vendors, and at the same time, it's probably not the answer to your problem.
Yeah, most times they want to look. This is not just real estate agents, mortgage salespeople in general. They want to blame everything on the planet for their lack of success, except looking in the mirror and say it's that person right there. And the shiny objects that come up, those distractions, they were busy trying to figure out which CRM to get. When in reality, all they need is a cell phone and an Excel spreadsheet, and you can make all the money in the world you need.
Yeah.
So obviously the systems make it a little bit easier, but without those base fundamental routine type activities, if you're not doing those, start there.
Yeah.
And move on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, cool. Let's talk more about the team. We got off track a little bit, but it was a good off track because I think everyone needs to hear that.
Yeah.
So biggest in your journey along the way, from being this corporate business trainer to, working for someone else to being a broker to owning your own shop.
Yep.
Tell me what you're doing now, and tell me a little bit about your journey along the way to where you are now, where you've gotten to.
Okay. So it was, I don't know if you've heard of the book, The One Thing.
We talked about it pre-show.
The One Thing is, it's a book. It's not about real estate. It's about focusing in. And at one point, my one thing was learning how to interview and recruit people.
Cool.
And it goes back to when I originally made my hire of my full-time executive assistant was kind of a big turning point for me. And I ended up I've taken it now like 4 times. It's actually a full class about how to recruit and how to interview and how to follow a very specific process. And the class is called career visioning. And there's also a kind of an aptitude test that people take that it really dissects their personality and their skill set. And it's interesting because once I learned how to do that, I learned that when people come and they're maybe interested in working with my team, for example, I think in the earlier days, it's like, hey, and like with my brokerage, if they could fog a mirror, they were hired. And and as time moves on, you realize that you get somebody who's not a good fit. That's a very expensive decision to make. It's not
Very
a benefit.
expensive.
So, learning how to do this, interview process and really handpick the best people for a team has been probably the biggest skill set that I've learned. And I literally, if I go back to when I first started on that, my skill in that department was basically zero. Because I went from being the guy who, just taking anybody who was willing to join, you were hired, to being pretty selective and pretty picky. And so it's interesting if you're looking for someone who's, the top 1% of the people in the industry, how many people do you have to interview to get that one person? I mean, it may not be 100 per se, but you have to talk to a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of people where it's just a no, thank you. It's because you're getting a quantity of conversations to pick somebody that's perfect fit for a team, and I think the more a team gels together, the pickier you get, because it's like this.
You don't want to ruin that.
You got 10 people that are working really well together. The last thing I want to do is just be random about throwing someone in there and messing up what has taken years to build. And so that's a skill set that, again, like I say, I've taken the full class 4 times, and if I can do it again in my schedule, I will. And it's something that I've learned. And again, working with my coach, who's very skilled at this process, it's that's probably one of the more important skills that I've learned.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. We went through a tremendous growth period in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah.
And we were, for lack of a better term, managing chaos.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we were, they always say, don't throw bodies at chaos. David Morgan always says, don't throw bodies at chaos. And he's right. But we had to throw some bodies at chaos. But the thing that we didn't want to lose, a good culture can make your company successful.
Yep.
A bad culture can rip it down twice as fast. And like you said, if you throw that body into that team that's gelling and working, well, now, the 4 stages of growing a team, you're forming the team. And then the team goes through storming. They start trying to figure out who works where, and where are my boundaries. And there's a little team storming, and then the team starts to form again. Or I'm sorry, norming. Thank you. And then we get to the performing stage, right? And every time you add a new person, you pretty much start over. And that storming is going to dictate, if they make it out, if you lose good people and things like that.
Yeah.
And so my job we have a very intricate interview process too. I mean, it's like multiple steps because our culture is our biggest asset.
And some people hate it. I mean, because ours is like 5 hours, and it's, it's just, and some people hate it. And it's interesting because at the end of the process, if it's done, the way this is designed, it's almost as if we've worked together for 6 months.
Really? Okay. I'll have to learn.
And we're looking for red flags, because a lot of times if a red flag comes up in this, let's say 5 hours, it's going to come up anyway.
Right.
It's just going to come up after you've been working with us for 3 months, and it's going to be much more harder to have a divorce, than it is to say it's just not a good fit. So, it's really important.
The jokes that people would say is the statistics showed us that it was harder to get a job at Morgan Financial than it was to get accepted at Harvard. The statistics. Now, obviously, there's a lot more that goes into, we bring up Harvard again, but a lot more goes into it. But the reality is we were picky because, and we still are, because you bring only takes one person in one cancerous or non-culture fit to really wreck what took years to build. Yeah. And it doesn't take long to bring it down.
Yep.
Cool. So part of building that team is putting the right people on the team.
Yeah,
right people on the bus.
and learning a skill. I had been, I'd done the training and development for a long time, and then I had been in sales. but the learning to do this was a brand new skill set.
Yep.
I admitted I knew nothing about it. And so I had to make it my one thing. I had to not only, first of all, get the administrative help, but also to learn how to do this, because as I'm bringing salespeople on, the same thing, I needed to have a high standard. And it's now to the point where it's a system. So it's like if somebody wants to come in and ask me to change and just throw out the system and make an exception, the answer is no.
Well,
it's going to be the system.
It's not going to end well
Right.
for the person that's trying to get the job and for the company.
Yeah.
And I found it harder as a salesperson to make that transition to an interviewer, because your mindset is, let's sell the person on coming to work here.
Oh, yeah.
And I could convince people to work
them
here.
to come to you. Yeah.
And that was a mistake,
Yep.
right? Because you think you have this mindset, well, I want to win. A win is getting them to come to work for me. That's not a win, right? That could be a tremendous loss. And switching to that mindset to, I need to find the right fit for the company. A win is finding the right person and being patient to find them.
And you get impatient if it's like, we need to fill this slot.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the salesperson kicks in and says, we need to, let's convince this person. Well, you can convince them they come to work here under false pretense, and then they'll quietly quit for a couple of months, and you won't fire them, and then loss of productivity.
It's hiring out of pain. If you're
Right.
hiring out of pain, it's not a good position
No,
to be
it's
in.
tough. All right, so you have a lot going on, right? You're running not just your own team, but tell me about what you're doing at Keller Williams as well.
Yeah, so and this is just in the last week and a half. So I am now the interim team leader at the Brevard County Keller Williams, which essentially is the manager of that market center, that brokerage. And so essentially I'm overseeing 220 agents, of which my little group of 10 people is a part of it. So
Gotcha.
I'm still running my team and taking care of our clients. But it's just that I'm also in essentially doing the same thing. I'm a recruiter and overseeing the operation of the brokerage, essentially.
Okay, so obviously a lot going on between managing your own team. You're still producing, right?
Yep.
Your own production and helping lead and steer this big brokerage of 220 some agents. Now, how do you manage all of that? What goes on that allows you to do that? How do you do that? What's the secret? Please tell me.
So this is new in terms of having the all of that responsibility, but I have been asked that, like, how could I allow? So I have a satellite office in Indian Harbor Beach. Our main office is up in Suntree. So how can the satellite office function? Well, I hired a sales manager, and so between my director of operations and my sales manager, they really don't need me to run it.
You like to think
beautiful,
they do, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have fun together,
right?
But that's part of the point, is that how can somebody move over here? Well, if you hire people that don't need you to run it, and having that sales manager is really was super important, because he has the one-to-one meetings with the sales team. He does the daily huddle with the sales team. He kind of handles a lot of the lead distribution and coaches the ones that need help. So it's things that I used to do, and I look back, it's like if I didn't have him take that role, that's my job. They would be suffering. They wouldn't be getting the help that they need. So that's been huge. It's just to have the right people. Same thing at the market center, is just having a great team just makes it doable.
Yeah, I mean, going back to hiring the right people, right?
Yep.
If you didn't have the right person in place, you probably wouldn't feel confident to let them run the team that you built over the last
systems and people and technology. Systems, people, technology. Between those three things, I mean, that can grow about as big as you could ever imagine. If you have the right systems and people and technology.
I'll change the word people to culture, if that's okay with you. Because I feel people make up the culture, but
Absolutely.
if the culture's not there, it would fall apart. So you've built a culture, that takes care of your business,
and a culture for salespeople too. Is it a culture of accountability? So I talk all the time with my people about, like, hey, you and I, do you want to get together and toss the ball on Saturday afternoon and play football, or are we going to try to win the Super Bowl, or intend to win the Super Bowl?
Right.
And the person who's looking to win the Super Bowl is going to behave very differently than the person who just wants to toss the ball on Saturday. And you can't have those two people on the same team. Something's going to give. And so if you're looking to have a very high-performing team, there's accountability, because if this is the Saturday afternoon behavior and we're shooting for the Super Bowl, there's going to have to be some changes.
Yeah, that accountability, and I'm a numbers guy. I mean, I look at the numbers and the raw data and say, what are the numbers telling us? So the accountability, a lot of people need that accountability partner. But in absence of accountability partner, I say, look, just look at your goals. Are you meeting your goals? Yeah. That's your accountability. If you wanted to make X this year, are you on track to make X? No. Then look at your activity. If your activity is in line, but you're not hitting your goals, maybe you're not doing enough. Maybe you're not doing maybe you're not doing the right thing. Where do you need training and help? That's probably where they'd go to you or the sales manager and say, hey, I'm not hitting my goals. I'm doing the activity, but it's not getting me the intended result.
Yeah.
So what do I need to do, coach? Right? Well, you need to double your frequency or halve it or do these activities instead of these. Or are you really doing those? Right?
Yeah.
And that's when the numbers can act as your accountability partner.
Yeah.
So as far as the balance goes, it sounds like you've made it happen, the balance. But how do you keep that in balance? Your team, your personal production, and your other team with the other than with the help of the people you have.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of it has to do with time blocking.
Okay.
And that's
good.
the hard part.
Yep.
But look at the calendar, and there's going to be, a time to do this, a time to do that. You lock it in and then stick to those blocks. So even though I know there's a bunch more that needs to be done in this, that there's an hour slot in my schedule, that's what I'm going to focus on then, and then move on. I actually got something now where I'm using a calendar booker. So if people try to get a hold of me and I've got booked appointments, I've got something called VimCal, which is like Calendly,
right?
Where I could send you a link and I could just show you, hey, I've got like 3 slots. You can choose from which one, and it makes it real easy. You can click on it, book right into my calendar.
Gotcha.
It's pretty cool, and it just makes it so that that yes, there is a limited amount of white space on this calendar. At the same time as I want to be able to, you still can get a hold of me if you need to.
Well, no, it's funny that I'm glad you said calendar, because the time it's an asset that we all have.
Yeah.
Most of us abuse time. I mean, the vast majority of people abuse their own time. They'll say yes to a million different things, and then they'll make excuses. Oh, time blocking doesn't work. I'm sure you've heard this. Time blocking doesn't work in the real estate business because, I have all these things and it comes in. You want to be there when the client's there. But the reality is you can make time blocking work. As many excuses as you can come up why time blocking work, I can come up with 10 that make it work.
Right.
And the reality is, yes, you actually, people are like, you can't schedule disturbances. I'm like, yes, you can. You choose whether you answer that email. You choose whether you pick up that phone. If someone can't wait an hour to talk to you, there's something wrong, right?
Right.
Is that the kind of client you want to work with that needs you right then and there every second of your waking hour? Or did you just fail to lead that client?
Right.
And I think a lot of the times people are scared to lead their client, whether it's in the mortgage or real estate business.
Right.
Mortgage guy doesn't want to say no to the real estate agent. A real estate agent doesn't want to say no to the customer.
Right.
And I'm not saying no is the answer, but sometimes it's, hey, let's schedule that. Here's my available times.
Yep. And a lot of times they don't actually need me. They want an answer to the question.
Right.
So if I can make sure that so I've been doing a lot of group texting. So if I include the transaction coordinator on the group text, and I fight to tell everybody, don't respond separate from this thread, and they ask a question that I don't need to answer, the transaction coordinator can answer that, or whatever the context. It turns out that they don't really need me. They need the answer to that question,
right?
And they get it if you structure it the right way.
You mean that the world doesn't revolve around you or me? And I think that agents are so scared. I'm going to include our loan officers in this too. They're so scared of not being that source of information.
Yeah.
When the client just wants it now. They don't care who gives it.
They want a good experience.
They
don't want us per se. They want a good experience, and that's our job, to figure out how we can give them that Ritz-Carlton experience,
right? White glove
without doing
service.
Everything necessarily ourselves.
Absolutely. So obviously you've seen real estate teams come. You've seen them go.
Yeah.
You've seen realtors come and go. What are some of the common mistakes that agents make when trying to build a real estate team? And how can they avoid them? Like, what are some of the common mistakes you see out there?
I think probably the biggest mistake that I've done it myself, so I'm not bashing anybody currently doing it, but the biggest mistake, I think, is to try to build a team and offer a deal for because if you don't know a value proposition about why people should join your specific brokerage or team, they offer what I would say too sweet of a deal to the agents to join them just because they're trying to attract them with cheap pricing, if you put it that way. And then they end up getting a whole bunch of activity with a very slim profit margin that's not really thought through. I think they think they're going to be the Walmart of the business, meaning high volume with a low margin. And they end up, they look good on the charts. They're selling supposedly lots of real estate, but they're actually making almost no money. And then they eventually, by the time they get, later in their career, they have no money, they have no investments, they had no profit margin. And so the question is that really what you want to do? Is it not better to do something that's, there's a long-term strategy, and if somebody's building a business with others, there needs to be a profit margin in that business, and they end up spending money on, I won't name any names of real estate websites, but there's a lot of companies that people buy leads from, and they're spending insane amounts of money. And so the only one really making money is those lead aggregates, not the agent or the team owner themselves.
Right, and that business is much lower conversion ratio, much higher. It's a much higher unlikelihood of runoff. The client will run off and go to the next agent. I like the referral business.
Yeah, plain
and simple. The referrals
much higher profit margin. It's easier and much higher conversion rate. And so I just think it's a question of models.
Right, that's true.
Follow the models that are working and don't try to reinvent the wheel. If I see something's working across the country and there's dozens of top teams and it's working and they have a 30% profit margin with that model, that sounds great. And yet you see people I'm just going to try this. And then they're trying something with different splits and different arrangements and different expenses. And they don't even, if you ask them, they couldn't show you their P&L. They don't even know what their profit margin is.
Yeah, I think so. You get revenue from one place, right? You get revenue from the sale, sale, either purchase or a sale of a transaction. And it's just how that revenue gets split up down the line. And I think sometimes agents, when they're building teams, they forget that that's a business, right? Yeah. And that business has to be profitable.
Yeah.
People aren't in business to make a loss.
You can't serve your team if you're not profitable.
You can't serve your team.
You're going to dry up.
You're going to die, right? And so they forget this little fact, and then the ego might get in the way. And we all have egos. I'm not saying I don't. I want to be the best, biggest mortgage company in Brevard County. And I'm sure realtors getting that. I want to build this big team.
Right. But they're going to buy their way to
They're going to buy their way in.
Yeah.
And, look, I know I know a couple of real estate agents that make a fabulous living off buying leads from those aggregators you talked about. Yeah. And they have a model placed around it, and they have a system in place. It is intentional.
Yep.
And so just same thing with a team. I know people that are very successful with small teams, big teams, but very unsuccessful with both of them. So it all depends. Like you said, it's a business. You got to set it up. You got to have a plan.
Pick your model and you run with it.
Right.
And then if it doesn't work, you've got to change it. But I think that's the key, is that a lot of people haven't even picked their model. They just
do it. Yeah.
And they just try something. Yeah.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to someone looking to start their own real estate team? And what do you think the biggest opportunities and challenges are with that?
So I think that if somebody's looking to start a real estate team, I do think coaching is extremely important. I think look at somebody who, or multiple different people that are very successful, somebody who is where you want to be. Mm-hmm. Don't get advice from people who are where you are. Right. Get advice from people who are where you want to be, and just ask them how they did it, and ask them for suggestions about as far as structures and tips, and I think that's part of what happens a lot of times. We talk to a lot, and not that we don't talk to our peers that are on the same level of production and same level in their business. That's great. It's just when you're going to make decisions about how you're going to build your business, talk to someone who is, if you're a $15 million producer, talk to the $50 million producer. Mm-hmm. Ask them how they did it. And a lot of times what you'll realize is that the difference between what they're doing and what you're doing isn't that much. It's very, very small. And you get to know, and that's why I love going to the big real estate events, like the most recent ones, like 12,000 people. We just were in Anaheim And before the pandemic, we were at an event with 20,000 people. Getting together with all of the people in the real estate industry, listening to the latest, and talking to people who are producing 3, 4, 5 times as much as I am, and asking them questions. A lot of times it's like, you're not that much different than me.
No.
Like you don't, I mean, I think I could do what you're doing. I just need to figure out what is it that you're doing that's a little different than what I'm doing and copy it.
Right. I mean, I think what you're alluding to is a mentor, right?
Yeah.
And so is your business open for mentorship? I mean, are there people that are willing to give you that advice? I would assume so, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the most successful people are the ones who are the most generous with suggestions for people. If they ask the right way, they'll tell you what, they'll look at your business and make suggestions.
Well, I'm
question
sure
about it.
I'm sure people on your team are probably aspiring to do what you do, right? And then you're offering them mentorship along the way, just in showing them what you do and how you do it.
Yep.
Well, cool. That's the questions I have. I got a lot of insight on this, so let's just do a quick recap if we can kind of bring back from memory.
Sure.
It's your journey along the way from doing business development and coaching to getting kind of falling into real estate. I hate to say that because it was probably much more intentional than that. But to building your teams, coaching.
Yeah.
Big for you along the way. Coaching, you're hiring the right people, culture.
Yep.
Right. Hiring the right people that you can trust and do the things and help you, like you said, leverage and grow your own business, grow their businesses and your business along the way. And then at the end, you talked about the biggest advice is recap that last piece. Finding a mentor, finding someone that can help you where you want to be.
Yeah.
Those are awesome, great takeaways, Tom. Anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I think that's the key is that you've got to be very careful of selecting who you're in business with.
Right.
Because they will, in a lot of cases, determine where you end up. Mm-hmm. And if you want to win the Super Bowl, you want to hang out with people that are looking to win the Super Bowl. You don't want to hang out with people who are just tossing the football, because there's a lot of people who are kind of laid back about it, and that's the result. They may make a living, they may have fun, and I think in the long run, as we're real estate agents, we're entrepreneurs, we're independent contractors, and to see yourself as an investor, a real estate investor. I heard just the other day that about 8% of real estate agents own investment properties. That's a very, very low number, which concerns me, because it's like they, either they're not making a lot of extra commissions or they're not buying real estate, which is what they sell. And I think that should be much higher. That if you see yourself as an investor, this boring job of calling a whole bunch of people, it's more exciting because this is my down payment on my next investment home, and that's my retirement, that I'm going to be able to retire someday, so I'll have something, whereas a lot of people don't have anything when it comes time for retirement.
Well, it goes back to the leverage piece, right?
Or you're showing houses in Palm Bay when you're 65 or 70 years old, right? And that's if you really want to show houses in Palm Bay when you're 70, that's great. But if you don't and you're doing it to pay bills, that's kind of sad, that you'd have to be working, later in life when you could be retired.
Yep. Well, let's. I do have three. These are three questions that aren't scripted that I ask them every time. What is your favorite movie? If you had to pick one, what would it be?
So my favorite movie, and this is all just going to be just because it's the one that comes to mind, is Greyhound with Tom Hanks.
Okay. Wow, that was.
He was the captain of a ship.
Yes. Okay. That was recent.
Yeah, and the reason I think it's exciting, especially being the team leader at our market center, and the team is just that leadership that you see in the movie. It was pretty cool.
Okay, I haven't seen that one yet. That's about the Sully dude who.
There's U-boats.
That's a different
they're
one.
Crossing the Atlantic during World War II.
Oh, okay. I've not seen that one.
He's the captain of the ship.
I'll have to check that one out. Okay.
Greyhound with Tom Hanks.
Favorite book? Do you have a favorite book?
So again, the one that's most recent, I really, really enjoyed it. It's called Discipline is Destiny.
Discipline is Destiny.
Yes.
Do you remember who wrote that? I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that.
No, I think it's
I'll check it out afterwards.
You'd have to see it. It's the guy who he has a podcast about the Stoics.
Okay. Not sure.
Yeah.
Check it out.
But it's really good.
I'm always looking for something good to
Discipline
read.
is Destiny is the name of it.
Cool. I'll check it out. Now, final question. Who's inspired you most over your life?
Oh, wow. Who has inspired me most? Again, I don't know if I have a top person who has inspired me most. All right. I'm probably just going to throw it to Gary Keller.
Okay.
Because he's, I've watched Gary in his, his writings and his, at all of the events that we go to, and to see how he has shifted and pivoted and made decisions that, uncomfortable decisions, and always done his best to help, support the agents that choose to work with him. And I've just been impressed. I haven't seen anything where I'm like, oh, I like Gary, but well, I mean, he's an interesting guy, extremely smart, but I'd probably put it on Gary. Yep.
Yeah. Great person to inspire to.
Yep.
That's all I got. Any parting words, anything you want to say?
No, I'm excited that you had me on, I love talking, so I enjoyed it. And I think it was really fun subjects to talk about.
I loved it. It's great
you.
talking to you. You're an awesome coach, an awesome leader in the area.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that you do. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, comments, put them down below. Subscribe, like, share all those great things. However you consume this content, we appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.